So good morning everyone. This is Rashwin, the Asian mechanic guy, and today we had this 2007 Honda CRV. Problem with this car, no crank, no start. So for today we are going to diagnose this car and we will try to find out what's the reason why this car won't start. So let's get started. First thing we need to do, let's verify the car. If there's no crank, no start actually, so key on the ignition switch. Battery is good, light is good. No crank. Well, the starter is trying to move. This you can hear a little movement of the starter or the flywheel, but still it won't start. So the next step we are going to do, we will be checking the battery. So let's do that. Alright, I got my multimeter. So black leads on the comb and then red leads on the voltage. So red goes to the red terminal, just sneak it there, and then black to the black terminal. Then let's turn it on to voltage. So see that we got 12.51. So battery is good. Let's try to crank the car and let's see if there are changes on the voltage. Right, that's the voltage of the car. Let's try to start. Let's see how much it can go down. So 12. See, no effect. See that it goes down a little bit. So 12.18. Now I'm going to crank. See, there's no changes on the voltage. Let's do it again. No changes in the voltage. Just goes more or less 12 voltage. 12.30. I'll crank it again. No changes. There's a little bit, but it's not that much. So what that it means, so if we crank the car and then there's only like a little effect on the voltage reading of the battery, we should look for the power going to the starter. So that's what we are going to do next. Verify the power, and also actually there were like two wire going to the starter, so we need to check the integrity of those two wires. So that's what we are going to do next. But before we do that, we are going to do a quick test for the battery integrity of this car. So we are going to turn on the light and let's see how much this voltage reading can drop. So we got 12.51. So battery is on, light is on. It goes to 12.17. So as for me, the battery is good. It only like dropped for a couple of volts. It's not even a volts, a millivolts. So next thing that we should do, check the power integrity of the two wire going to the starter. So that's what we are going to do right now. So I already removed this dust shield, so it has only a couple of plastic fastener, and the location of the starter is right there. That's the starter, this one. But the problem is that the store is located on the top and it's really tight in there. Well, I don't know if I could back probe those wire. Let's try it. So I got my power probe in here, power probe 3. So red leads, black leads is connected, and this is the wire. Then back probe, we can check the ground for this starter. If it has a good ground, I think that's, for the meantime, that's what we are going to do. And see that it lights up, it's green, so meaning it has a good ground. So body of the starter green, so it's confirmed it has a good ground. Let's go there. So see that green, it has a good ground, so the starter has a good ground. So next thing we need to do is to verify those two wire if there's a power on it. So we have to remove a couple of things in here. We need to remove this bracket because it blocks this starter. So let's do that. So guys, by the way, what we are doing here is just we are trying to verify the continuity of these two wires in here, but unfortunately we had a very tight spot in here. I might can pull the wire in here. That's the wire going to the ignition switch. Okay, and so did you see this, guys? This one. So this is the wire going to the ignition switch. So in what I did in order to remove that is that I used a pry bar. So just put it here. I don't know if you could see it. This, then push it going there. But before I do that, I did press. There's like a tab on the top. I just press it and then use the pry bar. Sorry about that. So what I did is there's like a tab on the top. I press it and then I use a pry bar and just push it this way. Now we can remove this. There you go. So that's the wire going to the ignition switch. Now, guys, I will be making a simple diagram for the how the starter works. So let's start with the battery. So let's say this is the battery. So this is positive and this is negative. So this is your ignition switch. Basically this is your key. So sorry about my drawing. And then this is your starter. So on the starter there were like two connections. one thin wire and then one thick wire. So the thick wire goes all the way to your positive terminal on the battery, and this should have 12 volts. Okay, this should have 12 volts, and then the other one is connected to your ignition switch, and then basically this should also have 12 volts in order to work. So basically that's how the starter works. So we are going to verify this wire if it has 12 volts, and then this second wire too, this has 12 volts. If this two wire has 12 volts, then 100% the problem is your starter. So that's the next step that we are going to do. So guys, I wanna confirm the continuity of this wire. This is the wire going to the ignition switch. So I hook up a pin, this, and the wire goes to my power probe, and then negative wire in here. Then I'm going to crank the engine, the car. So now I'm going to crank the car. We should get a 12 volts on that reading. So I'm gonna crank the car now. It should be at least 12 volts. Okay. Let me check. Let me check the camera if I got a. So let's go back to our diagram. So the one that we just checked a while ago is this wire. It's coming from the ignition switch, and we had more than 12 volts on that wire. So we're good with this. We have no problem with this. The continuity of this wire is good. Now we are going to check this wire, the thick one, the thick wire. But unfortunately we couldn't test it because the location of this is very tight. So I have no choice than to just remove the starter and then test this one. And if I get a 12 volts on this wire, then 100% your starter is bad. So that's the next step that we are going to do. So in order to remove the starter, we need to remove that sensor right there, that one. So I did manage to remove the wire, the connection, again using a pry bar, but you have to press. There's a tab on the top, so you have to press that with your one hand and then your other hand using a pry bar, and then just pry it. Then so this is how you remove the sensor. This is 1/2 ratchet, and we are using a long, I think that's 1 inch and 1/16 millimeter. Then right there, then just move that wire right there, move it going to the top, and then it's gonna be tight, but we can loosen it. So that's the sensor. So I'm using 1 inch and 1/16. So there is one long bolt at the back of this alternator, and in order to remove that, we will be using a same thing with the one that we use for the sensor, a long socket, and which is a 14 millimeter. Then again, we are using this 1/2 ratchet. Then it's gonna be tight, but again, it can be done. See this? Now it's loose. It took me a couple of tries to insert that socket. Just be patient, and again, it can be done. So this is the bolt from the back of the starter. Here we're using 14 millimeter socket. It's a long one. Then that's the one on the front. I think that's 17. And that's the second bolt right there. We are using 17 millimeter socket, and again we're using, that's the bolt right there. Let's remove it. There we go. There's only 2 bolts holding this starter. Guys, let's remove the starter. Just wiggle it. Keep wiggling it. There we go. Now we just pull it out. There we go. Push it there. And then push and then lift. There you go. Ooh, it's out. That's the starter. And this is the wire that I'm talking about. This should have a 12 bolts. That one. See this right here. So there's like a 12 nut in here connected this to the positive wire. This is the positive wire. We are going to check this one. This should have like a 12 bolts. So let's verify if this has a 12 bolts on it. And see that it's 12.6. So there is a power going to the starter. So now we verify that power in grounds is good, battery is good. So the problem is this starter. It's confirmed it has a bad starter. So we had one more test to check if this starter is really bad. We will gonna like start this manually. So again, my power probe, red, positive, and black or negative, and then I'll put ground going to this starter, and now I'm going to put power on the one that from the ignition switch, and we should see that gear should be rotate. But see that it won't rotate, it's got stuck. See, it's not rotating. and it's not even pushing forward. This should be like it will push forward, but it got stuck. See this? This gear should be going all the way in here, but again, this is bad. So it's really confirmed 100%. We need to replace this starter.